in
¿Qué?
how, and sometimes he just doesn't die. So maybe he's bounced between an S or A.
No,
He's just very
ese.
versatile. Very good character to pick and play and enjoy, especially if you
Sí,
can
ahora
understand
no
the
es,
skip
ese
and
no sé
understand the
quién
builds
es
in the
el
game.
mejor del
That will
juego.
favor
Este
him
vos
quite a
no
lot.
viste, ¿verdad?
Right now he's running a melee
No
build
sé,
more than anything because the
la
melee
verdad que no me
damage in the game
acuerdo,
can
vi
be
con
kind of
muchos
crazy
sueños.
with these type of characters, and they can deny CC quite easily from
Sí.
enemies, so they can't collect any
Medio
souls.
que adelanté nomás y no escuché el audio. Mire
It's a good position for this type of character, I believe. Then alongside that, we have the
Vivo
Guardian at the
ese.
same instance,
Sí,
and you're pretty much dead. There's no chance. In the early lane phase,
cierto.
he's very
Early
dominant.
game,
In
de
mid game
acuerdo.
to late
Late
game,
game,
it
no
all
sé.
comes down to how he
Depende del
engages, how
jugador
he
ya.
hooks, and takes away enemies. He's your pretty much your picker. You
Obviamente
can't
no
really
vamos
full
a ver
engage, but
buenos
that's how his kit
builds
works. And I believe people are using Echo Shard, which is a refresh on all the
para doble
abilities to
bomba.
get that combo off again instantaneously.
Echo
So you can
Shard.
kill the ultimate, which pulls all enemies towards them. And that is
Dynamo,
very
ese estoy de
nice. It'll put
acuerdo.
them in like a little stasis.
Vamos a
build,
ver.
and that's all.
Bro, esto no es una tier list. Que alguien le enseñe a hacer una tier list.
Puso Magini en ese.
No,
La
mira, no
mayoría
hay
de buenos-
ninguno en C ni en D. Eso así no funciona una tier
no
list.
se hace, es cierto, así no
Ok,
funciona. Este no sabe de lo que está hablando.
hace 5 días, este más
What
reciente.
is up, everyone? Welcome to the video. Blacklight here, giving you a deadlock tier list with the current updated patch.
Ah, ¿y
certain
dónde están
heroes being
el
buffed
dibujito de
and
la tier
nerfed,
list,
and
no?
where these current heroes
Perdón. Most fun. Bueno, el primero.
No tenés upload.
Dios.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this first game.
A ver, ese
I'm
yo.
putting him in S tier. He also has
Este
one
video,
of the highest
este le
scaling
puse en Magini
gun
último.
damages. And this is something that is kind of funny about Deadlock as a whole, is that
Tiene
this
que
guy is
Dynamo
like
hace muy buen gun
technically a
damage.
support, but both his 1 and 2 abilities buffs his damage and fire rate against the targets that he hits. So Dynamo is one of those characters
Te hace
that
su uno,
if
te
you just
lleva al
build
cielo
a
y te hace
kinetic
headshots
dash,
mientras vos
you can
estás ahí
really kinetic
streameando.
dash forward, stun someone, and you can one clip them before they land. And that's happened to me more
Para
times
mí que tengo que
than
aprender
not.
Dynamo.
Next up we have or I just
Qué
push him back
gritarlo.
down to the ground, and there's literally nothing you can do to escape. Next up we have Haze. Haze is one of the hyper carries in the game. She has an extremely strong ult that's like a AoE flurry that does crap tons of damage. Her laning stage is very weak, but she has a very strong sleep. So what she does sometimes is she
Late
can
game
sleep you, and
aparece.
then she can go combo it with a heavy melee. Or
B.
Infernus is one of the heroes I played a lot. I think his design is really put Infernus on A tier. I think the downside of him is also that
Estoy de
this is
acuerdo.
another hero that needs a lot of farm, and sometimes he doesn't get to his timing. There's always a big discussion if you should buy Ricochet or not on him, because it delays how long it takes before you buy Leech. But Ricochet makes him like one of the fastest farmers.
Siempre me cuestiono eso también.
Figure
Cuando
out
juego
for
Inferno.
yourself. Okay, Ivy is a weird hero. Ivy's ult recently got changed. Ivy supposedly a supportive kit. She has a root. She has a tether ability that you can always itemize the way you want it to be. I am gonna put Ivy in S tier. So what's very common
No
is
sé
that
ahora.
she will split push one of the side lanes very far while everybody is
¿Qué
like,
cosa?
occupied on the other side of the map.
Sí, ella
Because
puede
she has
hacer
such a
split
big
push y
fire
después
rate,
escapar.
You get some strong items like
Sí.
intensifying mags, Titanic
Qué
magazine,
fácil.
and Tesla bullets and so on. You push down walkers, really switches health of
Killing
the
A.
opponent. You need to be very close.
Killing
so
es muy
that's why you
fuerte.
normally buy a warp stone on
Muy
her,
bien.
so that once you're low, you can blink into someone
Si el uno le ponen
and
en
health
ese.
swap. And when you max out your lifesteal beam, it also silences them. So it's like a wombo combo where you blink in, you swap health, and then you start
Muy fuerte.
lifesteals beaming them while they're getting ahead. But definitely,
No sé si estoy de
a hero
acuerdo.
that I personally find boring, but she's, yeah, some people love that playstyle. Speaking of boring, now we have the
Casi
very
no
opposite.
aparece,
My
le
main
dijiste.
man, Mr. Jacob Lash. This is my favorite hero in
Jacob
the game.
Lash.
The one hero I play the most. It's a very similar playstyle to Doomfist in Overwatch. He is incredibly strong. in the
Doomfist,
right
¿en serio?
hands, has a lot of movement tech,
Sí,
a very
más
high
o menos.
skill ceiling, and a very high skill floor. Meaning that the first time you play him, you're gonna basically say that he's trash, trash Lash, because there's so much to learn about every single engagement, about every single 1v1, like what abilities to bait out, when to ult, how to use your ult, how high up.
Bro, tenés que demasiado jugar con la psicología de tu oponente cuando juegas con Lash. Tenés
Sí.
que baitear todas tus habilidades. Demasiado loco es.
you want to be.
Pero igual
Yo
es muy
nunca jugué
divertido.
Lash.
¿Cómo?
Nunca jugué Lash. No sé ni qué hacen sus habilidades. Sé que uno se tira por el piso, pero
Sí.
después otro te tira medio una cuerda y ese que te tira la cuerda no sé qué hace.
Te quita salud y le da salud a él. Es un lifesteal. Un poder lifesteal, mini lifesteal, pillas.
Hmm.
His ground slam does more damage the higher up you are.
Perdón,
But
no
the
me di
higher up you
cuenta.
are, sometimes it's
Perdón.
also harder to hit it.
Gracias.
Lash is just a very versatile character, which makes him really cool to play for someone who does content creation like me, because I'm going to spend a lot of time playing the game, and
No creo
kind
lo
of
que puede jugar
maining
Lash
a
a
hero
30
that has a
FPS.
very
No.
high skill cap is a lot of fun. I will say some games is really hard to play Lash. If you fall slightly behind, he's probably one of the hardest heroes to play to come back, because your combos don't really do much and you're kind of forced to get into the fray. You're kind of forced to jump in over them and try to lift them up and toss them around. There's a lot of counters to him. Paradox ult can swap you around. Mo and Krill can get the Phantom Strike and stun you out of it. Wraith can stun you out of it. Kelvin is actually a very strong counter to Lash, because after you toss them all into the ground, he can instantly dome and then you won't hit or slam and he will heal everybody back up. So that's why I'm going to put Lash in A tier, because this is not a fun list. This is a power level list. I don't think Lash is S tier. I think he's definitely an A. He's also the lowest picked hero right now, but I think that also makes sense because of how hard he is to learn. The hero
True.
design on him is so cool. There's not a huge variety of different item builds you can really go for him to play him in high MMR, but there are some adjustments. Some people buy more gun items. I play him very spirit heavy because I love the wombo combos
Yo
with like
también.
low cooldown on ult and everything. Yeah, Lash is kind of like a position 3 in Dota. Also funny when you go in
¿Qué es eso? ¿Vos no sabes?
No sé, no, yo no juego Dota, no sé.
when you look at Lash's lore, it just says Jacob Lash is an asshole, and I think that's pretty funny. Okay.
¿Viste el lore de Jacob, el de Lash en el juego?
No, no. Dice eso nomás.
Eso nomás
Sean
dice.
asshole.
Dicen asshole, toditos tienen elaborado, él solo dice eso.
Next up, we have McGinnis. McGinnis is an interesting one. She is one of the fastest pushers in the game. She spawns a lot of turrets. She can displace the map by putting walls up and wall people in. Her
¿Juega
ult
Valorant
also
o era
spams
un
a
pro de
rocket
Valorant?
barrage and stuff. A lot of people nowadays buy her as
Contenido.
a gun-focused hero because she does have a minigun, and if you have like intensifying bullets and Titanic mag and stuff, you can deal a lot of damage with McGinnis. I don't think she's that great. I think that most
Yo no
games
uso la
I play
ulti.
against McGinnis,
No sé
she
si te
needs to
dije
be
eso,
so
pero yo
far
no uso
ahead
la
to
ulti.
be relevant.
Ahora que
Usually
lo
what a lot of
decís,
McGinnis players will
tenés
do,
razón,
they will
nunca
just
vi.
like split push
Nunca
a
vi
side
que
lane
usa la ulti,
and
no
take
uso.
down towers really
Es
fast.
que
Like I
armo
mentioned with
todo
Ivy
arma
earlier,
y no
there's
tengo
only
daño
one
espíritu.
difference. McGinnis is
La
not as
ulti
good
te
as
da de
Ivy at
ventaja
getting
nomás.
out of there. So I feel like regardless of if McGinnis has slightly more
Su ulti
pushing
es
power than
horrible,
Ivy,
Leandro.
it's
Eso es
never
lo que
worth
tienen que
it
cambiar.
because you can catch her much easier. She is forced to buy fleet foot. She's forced to get movement speed abilities because she doesn't really
yo
have
sería un
an
creador
easy
de
way
contenido.
of getting back out of there. So I'm actually going to put her
Como
in
One
C
Pixel
tier.
de
All right,
Counter.
next up we have Mo and Krill.
En
Mo and
C.
Krill is a pretty funny hero. He's essentially got
Eso es
punch
lo más
ult
bajo
from
que
Dota.
puso.
He's very tanky. You usually
¿Cómo
buy
no va a
the
poner un
Torment's
D?
Pulse item on him that does a lot of damage around you, and
No sé, el
it also
argumento
makes you
es que el
farm
juego
a lot
está muy
faster. He
balanceado.
can disarm.
Tipo, no hay personajes horribles.
And lifesteal
Es cierto,
while
el
he's
juego está muy
underground calling.
balanceado.
Sí,
His kit is very
sorprendentemente.
versatile. He fits
bastante
in a
¿Verdad?
lot
balanceado.
of
Tipo, yo pienso
comps.
así, ¿quién es el
Very annoying
peor,
to play
peor, peor?
against. And his
No
ult
hay
is one of
ninguno
the
que
few
sea
ults that
trash.
completely disables ults
Mm.
like Lash
Todos son
and
viables.
7 ult as well. So
Moan Krill es un counter de Lash.
Von Krill,
Poké
super
también.
strong hero, I
Counter de
think.
Poké de Lash.
Definitely up there. One of the strongest ones. His gun is not good at long range, but it's kind of like, so I'm going to put him in, this hero
A
will
tier.
always be either really good or really bad. There's no in between. Just because of like, there's no easy way to balance her kit. Paradox has a shield. It's kind of like a Reinhardt shield in Overwatch. She can put in front of her. Or actually, Orisa, the old Orisa shield might be a better comparison. Later,
Bueno,
it's that
Paradox
much
no nos interesa
is
mucho.
a pretty
EB.
important distinction. You can
Este
make
sí.
fields imbalance count. Put her in B tier. Originally, I wanted to put her in A tier, but then I realized that like she's much easier to counter than you think. I also will say that I
Paradox,
feel
una
like
vez que
Rob
usa
has done a
todo su
pretty good
combo,
job in
demasiado
balancing
fácil de matarle.
overall.
Sí.
There are a few heroes that feel very strong, but there's no hero that feels really weak. And I think that's a pretty important distinction. You can make heroes
Pero no
really
sé si
strong,
Magini es el
but
peor
try
del
to
juego,
avoid
luego de la
making them
puta
really weak.
madre.
Next up, you have
Para
Qué
mí,
Pocket.
a
basura.
mí no,
Pocket
para
is
mí
like
no es
Puck
tan
in Dota.
débil
So
legalmente.
it's one of the most annoying heroes to play
Seguro que hay
against.
mucha gente
His
que juega
ult
mal.
applies a damage over time, non-lethal to the entire
Para mí,
team
como yo le
nearby.
juego, está
Does
bastante bien.
tons of damage over time. Also applies healing debuff
Pero
when
me
you
gustaría ver
upgrade
gameplay
it.
de alguien
And
que
it's one
juega
of those
mejor que yo.
ults that once you have the ult on you, you usually just want to back off and heal up because it's gonna do a lot of damage to you. He also has an immunity ability as well as a cloak he can send out and teleport to. So this is one of those heroes you really want to buy a silence glyph for because he's really hard to catch if you
counter
don't do that.
para
On
Pocket.
very high MMR, Pocket is great. On very low MMR, I think Pocket is kind of troll. I think in terms of the shotgun characters, I think Shiv and Abrams are just always going to be better. And I think that Pocket is just one of those heroes. I think it's kind of like Lash where like if you play him a lot, he's going to be really good. But I think in a lot of situations, he is also just not going to do much because he requires to get in there too. Like he requires to be next to them. Some pockets, they will just apply the ult and then run out. So I think I'm going to put him in B tier as well. I still think that like it's much more common and easier for like heroes like Infernus, Kelvin, Ladygeist, and so on to like dominate lobbies. And since this is kind of like a tier list of the overall power level, I just think that in a lot of
Me
cases,
sorprende
Pocket
que
does
Lash está arriba de Pocket, honestamente.
never get to do what his toolkit has designed him to do. That is also because of all the disables that are in the game. Then next up we have 7. When I first started playing Deadlock, 7 seemed like the strongest hero to me. It seemed like
Cierto, yo me acuerdo cuando jugué
Sí.
primera vez. Hija de puta, qué roto está esta mierda. Qué basura de juego. Y ahora
hyper carry.
está ahí.
His
No le tenés ni
movement
miedo a
speed
ese.
scales with spirits. He farms really fast.
No, no, no.
He
Late game está roto.
has
En
a
serio.
orb that does a lot of AoE damage around you. He also has a single target stun that is delayed after a few seconds, and he also has like a built-in Tesla bullets ability on his 3. He also has one of the strongest ults in the game, which is Storm Cloud. He can just like float up in the air somewhere and channel a Storm Cloud over a long period of time. That does shit tons of damage, and the range just increases. And it's one of the very few ults that can like solo defend your base when it gets like pushed really far in. He can like Majestic Leap up and then ult. The problem is that the higher up you get in elo, the easier he is to counter. You can counter him with a knockdown, you can counter him with curse, you can counter him by line of sight, just hiding, and he becomes like, when you build the ult build, you're kind of just focused on that one thing. You're just like getting cooldown reduction, you get the Spirit Lifesteal, you get Mystic Slow, get Majestic Leap and all that, and they're kind of just like praying for those Hail Mary moments. It's like playing like a Twitch clip simulator. You're just like looking for that big moment
Como ir al
where you're
casino.
gonna like 1v4 or something. Of course, there's a skill cap to it where you want to wait for the team fights to already start, so maybe people run out of stamina charges before you start ulting, so it's harder for them to escape it. He can also buy Unstoppable so that people can't stop his ult for like 7 seconds, but at the end of the day, you can also line of sight. You can simply just hide as well. So I think I'm putting him in B tier as well. I don't think he's as good as these heroes. I just don't. I think he's a noob destroyer. I think he's literally one of the skill check heroes. I think like in low elo, he
No.
just destroys. And I think the higher up you get, the harder
creo
it
que es
gets to
meta.
pull that off.
Estoy en desacuerdo.
Then we have Shiv. Now, you know what, guys? I want you to guess where I'm going to put Shiv. This guy needs a separate category, okay? This guy called Shiv. So, funny backstory. In this game, you can actually access the developer console and you can spawn in heroes before they come out. So I was playtesting Shiv a little bit before he was finished. His ult
La
was a
puta,
little
hace rato ya que
different,
juega.
and I was like, oh, this hero seems fun. I can't wait to play him. And then he came out. They changed his ult to be more like Axe ult in Dota. And when he came out, he just destroyed
empezaste a jugar
every
antes que
lobby.
salga
There were
Shiv?
people posting
Sí.
screenshots of winning
Antes que
40
salga Visco incluso empecé a jugar.
games out of 45 and shit, like with like 90, 95%.
Ambos estaban rotos cuando salieron, me acuerdo.
Right. And that was basically because his dagger applies a slow and a damage over time, and you could stack it by keep tossing daggers. So once you buy rapid recharge, you have 5 daggers you can throw at them. It does shit tons of damage over time, and when you're max rage, it also did AoE, hits nearby targets. And if you buy Spirit Lifesteal, you're just unkillable. They hotfixed this literally a day later, and they halved the damage on his dagger. And here's the funny thing. He's still incredibly broken. Shiv is the one hero that is destroying the most games in high elo lobbies still, after they halved the damage on the daggers. So that is something that is pretty interesting. Literally halved the damage on this dagger, and still he's incredibly strong. So yeah, if you
Bueno.
want to win games, play Shiv, but I think they will nerf him again. I think he's definitely too strong. He's also not fun to play against. It's not just the dagger. It's also the fact that his 3 ability is the same as the new facet for Death Prophet in Dota, where some of the damage you take is turned into damage over time. But there's one difference here. He can also press that button to negate some of that damage over time he's taking. And if he's max rage, he will negate more of that damage. That means that you can't really burst him down because parts of it will always be taken as damage over time. And it just
Inmatable
makes
era.
him incredibly tanky, even without tank items, to be honest. The rage mechanic is essentially that when he deals damage, a rage bar builds up, and once the bar reaches 10, all his abilities are powered up. So his dagger hits nearby targets, his
Vindicta A. Ok.
I can join your guild on one condition.
Hija de puta.
She's very strong.
El
I'll put her
mismo-
in A
la misma
tier.
cantidad de
I don't
tiempo
think
que
I'll
te
put her
toma
in
ver
S
el
tier
anuncio,
because
te
she struggles
toma
from the
instalar
same
un
issues that Grey
adblocker.
Talon does, which is that she can also easily get caught, especially when you face against the Lash with superior.
Conoce el ítem de Slowing Hex.
Sí.
Antes, Vindicta estaba en el aire, vos le tirabas Slowing Hex y de una se caía, ya, cancelaba.
Sí.
Ahora está nerfeado, tenés que tirar antes de que
Stamina.
eras muy
You just
roto.
like can't get away. You'll have to buy Warp Stone
Era
and you have to buy
muy fácil de hacerle counter a Vindicta con Slowing Hex.
Ethereal Shift, and you basically have to
Re
rely on
barato
your
encima.
team to
Sí.
peel for you to stay alive. But she can solo carry games if she's left alone. Next up, we have Viscus. Viscus is a very interesting hero. They recently changed him because the punch did so much damage, and they nerfed, quote unquote, nerfed to the punch. The way they nerfed the punch was that instead of making it a damaging spell that scaled with spirit, they now made it a melee ability. So
Qué
now
raro eso.
essentially, when he does that punch that he can spam, that punches people up in the air, it is actually considered a melee ability, which means that a lot of people now buy melee items on Viscus. People can buy Life Strike or other abilities that empower your melee.
Ok.
You have
Ah,
Warden. Warden has
Este me
a
interesa.
very versatile toolkit. He has a flask that he can throw, alchemical flask. It slows them and does spirit damage. Very strong in lane. It does a lot of harass damage. He also has a spirit shield that also increases his movement speed, and he has a root. So the interesting thing about the way his root works is that once you cast it on someone, a circle appears around you in a large radius, and then you have to exit that circle within a certain amount of time, or else you'll get rooted. If you get rooted, you're almost guaranteed to be dead because his gun animation is very strong and he will just spam headshots on you. It's very common to buy Slowing Hex on Warden because Slowing Hex will stop them from getting outside the circle in time, and it's much easier to hit the root. And your flask also removes 1 stamina when it's upgraded. So Warden is really good at catching people. It's very common to play movement speed oriented build. You get fleet foot.
es decir, la forma de jugar Warden es full speed. During speed, fleet foot y su 2 que te da speed luego.
Heroic Aura.
Man, no sé si viste cuando yo jugaba Warden me movía como Flash.
Mm.
Rapidísimo.
Sí,
era.
All these items that make you super fast, which makes it hilarious to play him. His ult also applies a big AoE lifesteal. The downside of the ult is that it takes like 2.2 seconds to cast the channel before it starts. So sometimes you get bursted down before you're able to get your ult off, which is pretty annoying. But definitely a fun hero to play, and I think he's very strong, and I think in a lot of games,
Nah.
Gordon can really pop off. I think it's one of the hardest heroes to stop if he gets ahead, because he will just start running everybody down. He will just tower dive.
Sobre
He's
Brenner
pretty
feo.
tanky as well, and he will just be incredibly hard to stop. I
¿De
think I'm
cuándo
gonna put
es
him in
tu
A
video?
as well. I think he
28 de agosto. Creo que sí.
definitely carries more games than these
Ahora ya no.
ones. Next up, we have Wraith. To me, Wraith is basically everything Haze wants to be. Wraith has... So yeah, we're going to put her in A
A.
tier as well. And then finally, we have Yamato.
see.
Yamato is one of those heroes that in one way is similar to Lash. There's a lot of movement required. It's also a hero that probably takes a little while to learn to like jump around and do cool stuff. Her ult is very unique because it makes you untargetable and afterwards invincible for 6 seconds. It refreshes the cooldown of your abilities, and they have like faster recharge times. And she's very hard to kill. If a Yamato gets ahead, it's really hard to catch up because she will just start like she can dive so deep without dying. She has a hook ability that lashes onto a target and a sword slice, and she can do extreme burst damage with her wand as well. She's also the only hero in the game who has a right click ability that does AoE damage, so she can
No,
actually
Shiv y Viscos también.
harass you behind cover with a right click. She throws these small
¿Qué
bombs
hace?
that
AoE,
uses up
dice.
2 ammo instead of 1. So she's
El
also
de Viscos. Tira una bola que explota.
very strong in laning.
Sí,
I
esto
will
es antes de la
say, I feel like
actualización,
this
pero
hero is
nerfeo.
only good if you're like a one trick or a
Él no
spammer.
tenía
I
eso
feel like
antes.
90% of the games I face a Yamato, she just doesn't get to do all the stuff she wants to do. Silence glyph, a lot of damage, and is in general very far ahead. And I'm gonna put her in B tier. I think the hero is strong, but I think that it requires people to really know what they're doing, and in most cases that does not happen. So
Pero va a
before we
pasar.
finish this video, it is time to list them within the categories. So first thing I'm gonna do is move Shiv all the way up here.
Entiendo. A ver.
Definitely the strongest. Deadlock tier list.
Ship completamente al inicio.
Mm,
Abrams.
¿Estás de
¿Qué
acuerdo?
Sí, estoy de acuerdo. Qué suerte que juego Abrams. Estoy en S. Después
Y
están
bueno,
estos.
voy a aprender Dynamo o Moen Krill.
Y bueno, tengo que aprender Infernus. También. Creo que Warden fue de los primeros que aprendí.
McGinnis. Le puse una categoría aparte, lo bueno, le puse el final de B nomás. Qué puta.
Pobre.
Pero bueno, ¿cuál es mi win rate? Vamos a ver mi win rate. Track clock.